Hello, everybody. People have and always will travel off to far-off lands, different countries and regions for very different purposes. Today, we'll discuss how this affects us, commonly known as culture shock. I will explain what culture shock is, the diverse ways in which we are affected by this, and ways to overcome culture shock. First, I will explain what culture shock is. Although there remains no clear definition, culture shock is a feeling of anxiety, loneliness, and sometimes experience when they arrive to another country. In 2012, Adrian Ferhan from the University College of London conducted a study that showed various attempts made to unpack the definition of culture shock. The results were published in the August edition of the Journal of Psychology and Education, showing the following ways the definition has been broken down. Strain due to the effect related to make necessary psychological adaptations, a sense of loss and feeling regarding status, profession, and possessions, being rejected by or rejecting members of a new culture, confusion in role expectations and values, surprise and anxiety after becoming aware of cultural differences. Culture shock describes the impact of moving from a familiar culture to one which is unfamiliar. It is an experience described by people who have traveled abroad to work, live, or study. It is felt by a certain extent when you're on vacation. It can affect anyone, including the shock of an unfamiliar environment, meeting lots of new people, and learning new ways of a different country. It also involves the shock of being separated from important people in your life, such as family, friends, and colleagues. These are people you would normally talk to at times of uncertainty. When familiar sights, sounds, smells, or tastes are no longer there, you can miss them very much. It is important to stress that culture shock has entered. Next, I will introduce the diverse ways we are affected by culture shock. The symptoms of culture shock vary and can be easily misunderstood or even overlooked because they are like reactions that occur in our everyday life. The link between culture shock and what we are feeling at a given moment may be different to see. It is very common for people experiencing culture shock not only to deny the possibility that culture shock has been a problem, but to shift the focus, attributing their stress, behavior, and values to people around them. It is important to understand that culture shock has a wide range of symptoms, and many people experience annoyances in the process of adjusting to life in a different culture. These reactions are probably better characterized as item irritation, a cultural practice or attitude that drives you nuts when you encounter it, or cultural fatigue, a temporary frustration. However, for a few, culture shock can be a profoundly disorientating experience that takes much longer to recover from, particularly if those in the midst of the experience are unaware of the sources of the problem and have no idea of how to counteract it. Different people react in different ways to culture shock. Some of the common signs and symptoms of culture shock are as follows: homesickness, change in attitude and weight, irritability, boredom, conflicts with others, unexplained depression or feelings of being out of control. You may notice that physical problems related to stress, anxiety, and you may not feel like you were in control of your environment. You may feel vulnerable, fearful, or anxious. Now I will discuss how we can overcome culture shock. What can we do about culture shock? You must first realize that you are not alone. It happens to everyone. It is always wise to be tolerant. You're in a foreign country that has values, thoughts, and behaviors different from those of your own home country. Approach these values, thoughts, and behaviors with an open mind. Do not consistently compare the U.S. with your host country. Culture shock does not come from a specific event. It is caused by encountering diverse ways of doing things, having your own cultural values brought into question, feeling that your rules are not adequately explained, and being expected to function with maximum skill without adequate knowledge of the rules. Therefore, strategies for coping with culture shock are as follows. Know as much as you can about your host country. Find logical reasons for cultural differences. Don't disparage your culture, your host culture. Identify a host national whom you trust and discuss your feelings. Spend time with those from the country and talk about your experiences. Do not isolate yourself. Take part in social welfare and practice stress management activities and stay in contact with family, friends from home, sending letters, emails, or making phone calls when possible. Remember, cultural adjustment is a process. Have faith in your thoughts and in yourself that you will survive, cope, and have a positive experience. In conclusion, most everyone is affected in some way when they're traveling off from their homeland. We explain what culture shock is, the diverse ways we are affected by this, and the ways to overcome culture shock. Thank you.